Welcome back to Duck Stash, the University of Oregon show on Dash Sports. I'm Izzy LaRue with Michael Strite. Michael, let's get into everything Ducks football. So, Michael, we've discussed this before a little bit, but I really want to pin it down before the season starts. Who do you think is going to be QB1 for Oregon come November 7th?
Yeah, Izzy, the discussion rages on. It really is going to be a continued battle. I think it's going to be a battle all year long. And I've actually started to turn my opinion has changed in the past few weeks, I would say, and I think yours actually has the same. We kind of agreed on it, but I'll start with Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck is the uh, leading candidate with the most Oregon football experience. Now, Tyler is out there sort of expecting to take over. He's been in Justin Herbert's shoes. He's been in that system. But there's two new faces in Jay Butterfield and Anthony Brown that both, I think, Oregon fans in both their cases would be really pumped to see them take the field and play quarterback for Oregon. So this is a really exciting three-way battle.
Yeah, at first I was really on Butterfield. I was like, Butterfield. He's like the perfect replacement for Herbert. But then I was doing more research, and in my column that you guys can catch this weekend, we completely forgot about grad transfer Anthony Brown from Boston College. Michael, I don't know how we missed him. That's on that's on our fault. Like, he's a really good quarterback. He's not as tall as other guys. He's 6'2". He's not like your ideal 6'5", 6'6" quarterback that can easily stand over the line. But he's still a really good quarterback, and he's the quarterback that has the most college experience out of those two put combined, because you have Butterfield, who's going to be a freshman this year straight out of high school, and you have Shuck, who really didn't get that much playing time over the past couple of years. He got some garbage time play, or when Herbert was out a little bit for some games, Shuck was in, and he really doesn't have a lot of stats or playing time. Brown, if you look at it every single way, he's the best quarterback on this roster right now. He has the most experience. I feel like he has a better arm. He's a lot better at avoiding the sack and can get you some rushing yards too. And with Joe Moorhead, and his RPO offensive system, he would love a quarterback like Anthony Brown to go with our offensive threats like Micah Pittman, Jalen Redd, and our backs, CJ Verdell, Cesar Bibilikio, Travis Dye. Like, it goes perfectly. You just think about it. He fits perfectly in our system with Joe Moorhead. And then to top it off at that, too, he's a grad transfer, so this is his last year of eligibility. Think about it, Michael. He could have went to Georgia. He could have went to Mississippi State with Mike Leach. He could have went to a number of other schools, but he chose Oregon because he knew he was going to play there. You don't just transfer to a school and then ride the bench for the whole entire year. You go there because you know you're going to start.
Yeah, this kind of dawned upon me too, Izzy. I realized it around the same time you did. We both sort of stumbled across Anthony Brown, and that's exactly what I was saying to you was you don't transfer to come play, on the bench. And it's one thing that you don't transfer if you don't think that you have a really good chance to go out there and perform and be the quarterback at Oregon. But the school itself doesn't recruit you unless they think you're going to be the starter. It would be incredibly dishonest and disingenuous for the University of Oregon to not bring in Anthony Brown if their intentions were not to at least give him a chance to play quarterback for the Oregon Ducks. So you take a step back and you look at this, and there's no way that they bring in Anthony Brown to not at least get him out there on the field for part of the season. I mean, that's brutal to take a guy in his senior year and convince him to transfer. They talked him into it. He moves from Boston College. I mean, he's already in the Power 5. I assume he's the starter at Boston College, but obviously if you have the chance to be the starter at Oregon, you're going to take that. So you make that leap from Boston College to Oregon, and you expect to have a chance, and you expect to be able to play at this high level. And so Anthony Brown, I mean, I am excited about it. I'm excited to watch him. And with Anthony Brown and Tyler Shuck both having really strong resumes, and I think the way that camp is playing out this year and the weird season, the fact that it's a short season, the fact that there's a weird sort of camp happening right now, and everything about the weirdness of 2020, I think that definitely hurts Jay Butterfield's case. We've seen true freshman quarterbacks all across college football, and we've seen some
Yeah,
fantastic true freshman quarterbacks.
I feel
And
like
yeah,
honestly
go ahead.
that he should take a rest season. I don't see him getting.
Yeah, it makes too much sense for Jay Butterfield. So I expect him to not see the field and collect that red shirt and retain that eligibility. And this season will be more of a battle between Anthony Brown and Tyler Shuck. I mean, maybe there's a chance that Jay Butterfield is flat out the best quarterback in the camp. I would say that's a low chance, but I'm leaving that door open because usually when these true freshmen do rise to the top, when they do end up as day one starting quarterbacks for those Power Five college football teams, which, like I said, happens every year, probably less so this year because of the way it's been. But when it happens, it's just because they dominate in camp, and it's clear to everyone on the coaching staff that okay, this is the best quarterback we have on our team right now. Regardless of the experience, we got to just let him go and let him play. So I'm going to leave the door open for that to be possible for Jay Butterfield. That's definitely unlikely, though. I think the most likely scenario is for all the excitement around Jay Butterfield and even Robbie Ashford in the same boat, a really young, exciting, talented freshman quarterback that Oregon is getting from the state of Alabama. Big fan of the state of Alabama personally. You expect to see a red shirt for him too, and I'm really curious when you bring in two quarterbacks like that. I guess it's in the quarterbacks transferring is becoming a lot more popular these days. So I think would be shocked if both Robbie Ashford and Jay Butterfield finished their careers, their college careers at the University of Oregon. I think for that's an example of one of them stays, one of them goes, and the future is bright for Mr. Butterfield, but it'll be a battle between Tyler Shuck and Anthony Brown. And I'm excited to see Anthony Brown get his chance because he has a lot more tape. He has a lot more experience, and this isn't just experience in like FCS. I mean, this is Power 5 ACC experience. So he's an athlete, and he's going to be fun to watch. And I'm with you that I expect Anthony Brown to be the quarterback, and I also expect Tyler Shuck to get a look. I think Tyler Shuck won't be totally silent this year either.
Michael, do you have the same concerns as me with Brown in that he's had two season-ending injuries and they were both on his knee?
Well, still there, is he?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, yeah, like I was saying, yeah, with his knee injuries that he's had his freshman and junior year, it's kind of the real reason why a lot of teams weren't really that interested in him when he was transferring because they don't want to take a guy who's been injury prone, especially with that knee. It can be really iffy, especially if you tweak it just a little. It can have another season-ending injury, especially with what you've seen in the NFL. There's been a lot of ACL tears because there hasn't been the same type of training camp, preseason, all of that. And now you look at college football, it's kind of the same situation where it's not the same preparation going into the season, at least for the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. So you have questions whether if he's going to stay healthy for the rest of the season.
Yeah, that is a great point there, Izzy. For sure, we've seen in the NFL, and I don't know too well about college football so far, but we've seen in the NFL for sure that the shortened preseason has caused a lot of injuries, and it's especially hurt the San Francisco 49ers, who both of us were hoping to see in the Super Bowl again this year, and that's unlikely now. And for Anthony Brown, that's a legitimate concern, and it's going to be something that Oregon fans and Oregon's coaching staff is going to think about every time he's on the field. And I'm curious whether they cut him loose, whether they really run him out there and use him in every capacity and open up the playbook for him, or whether that injury is going to be in the back of their heads. And if Joe Moorhead's going to start a little more conservative with the play calling for Anthony Brown. And before we move on to our next topic, Izzy, I'm going to let you. I see you smiling. I'm going to let you get into that banter with the chat again.
Yeah, welcome back, Matt. Really appreciate you. Thanks for telling us that Herbert's 0-4 in the NFL, and I want to tell you something about that. It's not his fault at all. If you watch the games instead of looking at the box score, or even if you do, you'll see his stats. He's been phenomenal these past 4 games that he's started. He's arguably better than Joe Burrow. He's one of the best rookies in the NFL right now. He's thrown for over 300 yards 3 different times. Should be 4. He had 290 against the Bucks. He just threw that unfortunate pick at the drive at the last season. But yeah, look out for the Chargers. Burrow, he's going to get his first win after this bye week against the Jaguars, because anyone can get a win against those Jags. But I'm telling you this right now, the Chargers are the best 1-4 team I've ever seen in my whole entire life.
Yeah, the Chargers are a special kind of miserable. I remember, literally last year they set the record, the NFL record, for most times that they've lost a one possession game. So a really tough, painful loss. And this year, all 4 of their losses have been that. So they're trying to break their record from last year. It is a incredibly miserable and painful time to be a Chargers fan right now.
Yeah, let's move topics now. Speaking of some tough games, Michael, who's Oregon's toughest opponent this season?
Yeah, let's dive into the schedule again, and that's as we get closer and closer to the season. It's so close yet so far away. It's getting closer, but it still feels like we got to wait too long before we get to watch Oregon actually take the field. But Oregon's schedule, obviously the toughest opponent we expect to be that Week 7 matchup in the conference championship, but we're not going to talk about that because we don't know what that opponent is or where Oregon ends up after those first 6 games. What Oregon is looking at is going 6-0 in these first 6 games. For me, personally, Washington is the real standout on the schedule, and it is a real blessing for Oregon that they get to play them in Week 6. Oregon gets to grow and build momentum and develop as a team and be really hitting their peak form before they face Washington, rather than having to just run right up against Washington at the beginning of the season. So Washington is in a class by itself as the team that Oregon is going to circle on the calendar, where everyone else on that calendar just feels very beatable.
Interesting. I had the team that Oregon plays the week before Washington, and that's Cal, just because of Chase Garbers. Now, he's an up-and-coming quarterback. Look out for him, guys. He's going to be one of those Pac-12 quarterbacks that people are going to be talking about. He could even potentially be a first-round pick when his time comes. He tore up the Pac-12 last season before being out for like 4 games. And when he came back, they finished the season undefeated. And he's looking to tear up these Pac-12 defenses this season as well. And this Oregon secondary, it's going to be tested by Garbers because we only have Lanier coming back. And even though we've all talked about the astute defensive backs that Oregon has that are either sophomores or rising juniors, they still don't have that much playing experience in the Pac-12 compared to the starters from last season. So this is going to be a really telling game of what Oregon's secondary can do in playoffs, not only in the Pac-12 championship game, but also if we make it to the college football playoffs.
Yeah, that's a great point. California, when you have a quarterback that is that talented, absolutely going to be scary. But this actually fits in with my point, too, about how convenient it is for Oregon that the Cal game is the second to last on that 6-game slate. If you are Oregon, if you are the coaching staff, you absolutely, and I'm not speaking for them, maybe they do have a different opinion, but I'm guessing that they absolutely would prefer to have that ramp up, to have the difficulty of the schedule be getting more difficult as it goes on, and to at least start with some easier matchups. Now, I don't want to write off Stanford or Washington State as easy
Come
wins.
on,
There
Michael.
is
Come
that thought
on.
in the back of my head. I mean, you don't even have to travel very far back for either Stanford or Washington State to experience some painful losses that Oregon has had against both of these teams. Stanford, I'm a little bit more confident in, but Washington State on paper, you're like, okay, they got a new coach. This is going to be a down year. Oregon should take care of this, but Oregon just can't handle their business against Washington State. Even last year against a 6-6 Washington State team, they got bailed out at the end of the game. I mean, they almost lost at home. At home, they almost lost to this Washington State team. Traveling to Pullman is never easy, and so that is another scared point. And I'm going to say actually that Washington State game is the second toughest in my opinion. It goes Washington 1, and I respect Cal, but I'm going to put Washington State as the second game that I think Oregon has to be afraid of.
Yeah, we have Matt and Cody talking about their teams. Guys, both of your guys' schools have new quarterbacks, just like Oregon. But remember, I don't think Washington State has a transfer quarterback like Anthony Brown, and Washington. I honestly don't know what to say about your quarterback situation. We'll see what happens week 6, but I wouldn't be too confident if I was a Husky fan in my quarterback play.
Yeah, but it's a good point that Matt makes about how whatever Washington, whatever potential that they have for this season with their new quarterback and their new pieces, they should also be reaching their potential by week 6. So, if anything, I expect to be facing a really strong Washington team still. Maybe not a ranked Washington team. I don't know about a top 25, but at least an above 500 tough team to beat that Oregon's going to have to play in that week 6. I fully expect that. And Washington State, regardless of how good that Washington State team actually is this year, traveling to Pullman, I just expect it to be close. It's like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be a nail biter. Or it might even be worse than a nail biter for Oregon if they can't sort of start the season strong, because it plays right into my fears that I've talked about for this Oregon team, that they're going to have a difficult time starting the season well. And first road trip going right out to Pullman, yikes. And Cody hits the nail right on the head. Is even Justin Herbert, the great Justin Herbert, has some tough memories in Pullman. And a lot of Oregon fans, in the same way that you don't want to bring up traveling to Arizona for road games, traveling to Pullman does not have a good memory for Oregon fans the last time it happened.
I think we can both agree, Michael, that we're glad that there's no Arizona schools on our schedule this season, especially at their home, because that would be the toughest game on the schedule
Yeah.
if we were playing Arizona or Arizona State. But luckily, we're not. We're playing Cal and Wazoo and Washington State, Stanford, UCLA, and Oregon State. So it's going to be a fun season. I really expected, like I said before, we should cakewalk around this schedule, around the Pac-12. And Cody and Matt, or anybody else listening right now in the chat, put down what Pac-12 schools you guys think will be ranked throughout the season. They don't have to be ranked by the end of the season, but what schools do you think are going to be ranked throughout the season? I'm interested to see who you guys think will be in the top 25 throughout the season. We all know Oregon's going to be there the whole season because we're going to be at that 4 spot when it comes to the end of it. So I just want to see what you guys think. And let's go to our next topic, Michael. We kind of touched up on it in the first topic a little bit. How will training camp during the school year affect the Ducks, Michael?
Yeah, so they're starting this season. Every Pac-12 school is dealing with the same struggle, but it really throws off the schedule for how a college football season should go, and that is that there's a spring and a summer camp that happens before the season. Everyone's familiar with spring football. Everyone knows about that spring football game that happens in It's just a bunch of practices. But as you head into that summer, these are when players don't have classes. They usually are there. Maybe they take some classes on the side or something easy, but for the most part, I mean, they're clearing out their schedule. They're not doing anything in the summer. They're getting ready for the season because it creates a golden opportunity for a team to practice a lot. I mean, they're going day in and day out. This is where great teams are built. The foundations of them are constructed in this summer camp leading into fall, leading right up into week 1. And Oregon has had a very scaled back version of this camp that, it wasn't really happening. Or if it was happening, it was just Tyler Shuck throwing balls to Johnny Johnson in Arizona. And now camp is in full swing and they're training, but they're doing this while school is in session. There's classes. Me and you, we both got classes. I mean, there's class stuff in there. This whole schedule's been thrown off. It's compressed time-wise for freshmen especially, and anyone that's new to this offense. It's just a lot shorter amount of time to put it together. And I don't want to discount the fact that this is something that every Pac-12 school is pretty much dealing with, but it's going to be a huge factor, I think, on how this season plays out. And I think maybe when the season shakes out, it doesn't mean too much. But at the beginning of the season, I think this is something that it's not just going to be like the same thing as a game one or, game one of the Pac-12 schedule last year for Oregon in terms of how ready the team is.
Yeah, they're currently in their second week of camp right now. And I can't imagine how hard it is for them right now because, like you said, they have classes. And usually it's a lot easier with online classes, but you have to remember, like some professors, some schools, they're not really taking it easy on the assignments. So you're having morning workouts, and then you have your other workouts because you can't just work out once a day to be great in college football. You have to work out multiple times a day, and then you also have practice to go with that. And then sometimes they have to do media availabilities because they're required to do something like that if they're chosen by their coach or whoever the SID is. And you just channel out there. It's just a bad storm, Michael. I don't really see this being an enjoyable time for them right now because right now they're supposed to be in season. They're supposed to be having practices daily, a set schedule, games at the end of the week. But it's just got completely flipped upside down. They're dealing with classes, they're dealing with practice. Maybe they have some PT to deal with. It's not going to be an ideal situation for a student athlete right now.
It's definitely not ideal. We know as students that also juggle other things that it's not ideal. And this is, the things that we have going on outside of class is like so small compared to what a genuine, D1 college athlete has to deal with in terms of the amount of practice, the amount of things that consume, their day-to-day life. And so the two things that jump out, and I think this is something that we also got to dig into actual player interviews, media availabilities, talking to the coaches. This is a great, great question to be asking at all these media availabilities because I want to hear it from them. I want to know what they think is going to be difficult, and I want to hear from their perspective. But what I'm guessing is going to be the challenge is the new players to the program, the freshmen. I think there's going to be a lot less on-field action for freshmen than if it were a normal year. And I think there's going to be a bigger learning curve for anyone that's new to playing Oregon football before they really are going to be able to be their best. And if you're not all the way up to speed, you're just not going to find the field because regardless of how talented anyone is, you've got to be fully up to speed with the play calling. Otherwise, football is a game that really comes down to mental mistakes and making these mental decisions and being aware of what's going on. And that's what pushes teams like Oregon, into the top 10 is that everyone's on the same page mentally and that team is locked in terms of how well they know their playbook, stuff like that. And the other area is what you brought up earlier, which is injuries. Hopefully, in the Pac-12 and in the University of Oregon, there isn't an abnormally high amount of injuries, but you gotta wonder how well these players are keeping up physically. Now, I think in terms of working out, in terms of being in their best shape, these players are doing a pretty good job of staying in their best shape. But you have to always account for some more injuries, in those first few games of the season, just because they haven't had as much experience just, hitting pads against each other. I mean, that is at the core of football. They're not getting that much time out there really banging helmets, and
And
that is
even
where
in-game
injuries could pile
speed
up.
too, it's way different than it is in practice. At practice, they're not going 100% during drills or during sevens or fives. In games, it's 11 on 11. Everyone's going full speed, and you're making these cuts and turns where you're not used to it. And you saw it, like with the Niners, especially how many ACL tears they've had to deal with. Unfortunately, like I really hope that everyone in the Pac-12 stays healthy because like you said, Michael, these first 2 weeks, it's going to be very telling how the rest of the season is going to go with injuries wise. And to your point about uh, experience and players and like the freshmen, Oregon's really lucky that Moorhead is their new OC. Well, not Oregon, but the incoming freshman and transfers and all that because everyone's starting at the same spot on the offense. They all have the new OC. They're all learning the new playbook at the same time, and all the freshmen who've registered early in spring term, they also got to deal with the playbook a little bit before the summer, so they're up ahead over some of the other freshmen. And then with Anthony Brown and Tyler Shook doesn't really have an advantage over Brown anymore playbook wise. He only really has an advantage over Brown having chemistry with the receivers because he's thrown to those Oregon receivers a lot more than Brown has. So this is why I'm kind of excited to see who's going to be starting at quarterback because everyone's starting at a blank slate on the offense.
Yeah, the quarterback battle deserves to be the lead storyline heading into the season. It will be what everyone wants to ask Mario Cristobal about leading up to that first game, and it'll be what everyone wants to talk about after that game is how well the quarterback performed, whoever it is. When I talk about freshmen not getting a lot of action, I think that has a lot more to do on the defensive side of the ball because that's where we have all these 5 stars that people want to see play and want to see do well. On the offensive side of the ball, maybe we can talk about this next week, but I don't see a lot of freshmen or redshirt freshmen that are even going to play much. I mean, there is some spots where we'll dig into this. We can talk about it more next week. There is some places, but for the most part, I think there's not a lot of room for freshmen to dive in. Also, because of the lack of those non-conference games, and at the quarterback position, the potential for injury and the weird schedule is all not helping Anthony Brown because you can imagine Brown would have a really great time if this was a normal year, being able to rehab, being able to learn the offense, being able to get a lot of experience in camp. This would be a totally different setup for Brown, and I think we both expect to see him play. We both think he's going to do well, but these things are stacked up against him a lot more so than they are against Tyler Shook, who is a lot easier, a lot safer of a choice right now to be Oregon's quarterback.
Yeah, we'll see soon enough when Cristobal makes his official announcement who's going to be QB1, and we'll be there to give our opinions about it. Thank you for joining us today, guys. And make sure, remember, we have a partnership with sportspac12.com where we do columns. So look for Pac-12 columns from our Dash host or from whoever else. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure to follow us at dashsports.tv on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and check out our website too at dashsports.tv. And make sure to catch our weekly shows with me and Michael Fridays at 5 p.m.